Now, here's something we would love to hear your comments on. Should a safe and healthy environment be a human right? That's the question we're asking. The United Nations says yes, it should. We agree. The UN Human Rights Commission is expected to adopt a resolution later this week. The resolution will make access to safe and healthy environment a human right. Reports say most UN member states are in favor of this. As always, there are some who are not. And you'd be surprised which ones. Countries who claim to hold environment closest to their hearts, who claim to be champions of the cause. The United States, for example, the hypocrite in chief, it does not want to make safe environment a human right. Neither does Russia or Brazil or the United Kingdom, the same United Kingdom that is hosting the biggest climate summit this year, the COP26. They don't want clean environment as a human right. And by the way, Boris Johnson has been all about climate of late. He says that humanity is reaching a turning point on climate. Sure it is. And yet he doesn't want clean environment to be a human right. Same with the US. They apparently have legal concerns. What kind of concerns? Recognizing new rights could dilute old ones. That is America's big worry. That is their argument. What do you say to arguments like these? You call them out. You call out the lies and hypocrisy. Climate action makes for a fancy cause, a perfect campaign pitch, an attractive agenda item at summits. It's the politically correct thing to do, to rally for. And that's where it ends, unfortunately. The moment an opportunity comes up to actually do something about it, most leaders would rather not. Take Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro and Russia's Vladimir Putin, for example. Both are opposing the resolution. They say it needs amending. What kind of amending? In how many different ways can you say that a safe and healthy environment is non-negotiable? The fact that it is not a human right already is pretty sad in itself. Say the resolution manages to pass and clean environment does become a human right. What happens then? Will it force governments to clean up the environment? Will car makers be forced to go green? Will factories be forced to switch to renewable energy? Will there be more caps on carbon emission? If history has answers to these questions, the answer would be a big no. Clean environment as a human right in itself will not make the environment clean. Yes, I'm not being pessimistic, I'm just being realistic. You see, we have the right to life, and yet we have genocide in this world. We have the right to health. We also have malnutrition. We have the right to education. We also have 258 million children and youth out of school. So making clean environment a human right is just a means. It is not an end. In fact, the UNHRC has a long list of human rights. It has 30 basic rights, from civil rights to cultural, economic, political, social rights. There is, for example, the right to work in just and favorable conditions. There's also the right to highest attainable standards of physical and mental well-being. The right to rest and leisure, would you believe it? That is a human right. Has the UNHRC been able to protect or ensure these rights? It has not, and you cannot blame them for this. Because this council can only make recommendations. Its resolutions are not binding. So the UNHRC can make clean environment a human right, but it's up to UN member states, countries, governments to protect that right. And this works very differently from rights guaranteed by a country's constitution. In India, for instance, we have 6 fundamental rights, and the government is bound to protect those rights. Citizens can move court when those rights are interfered with. But that is not the case with rights listed by the UN, not unless a country adopts it as part of domestic law. I'll give you an example. In 2010, the United Nations passed a resolution. It was the right to water and sanitation. Soon after this, Tunisia adopted it as part of its law. So now it is binding in Tunisia. But such cases are the exception. The norm is this. We live in a world where many leaders still do not understand the climate emergency. How else do you explain the US and the UK's opposition? Then there are countries which have environmental laws at home, but they're ornamental. Did you know that more than 100 countries already have the right to healthy surroundings? 100. The list includes Russia, the same Russia that does not want clean environment as a human right. There's also Bangladesh. It has a constitutional provision for a healthy environment. What Bangladesh also has is the world's 4th most polluted city, Dhaka. Even China has a constitutional provision for a healthy environment. It also has smog every year. The right to healthy environment is legally recognized in more than 80% of the United Nations member states. This is either through constitutions, legislations, treaties, or court observations. So environment becoming a human right will definitely help. It will also make it easier for the UN to support states in improving environmental issues, examine their compliance. It will make it easier to pressurize governments to clean the environment. So here's what we say: a clean environment must be declared a human right. It's long overdue. The proposal was first conceived in the 1990s. It still hasn't been passed. 13.7 million people die every year because of air pollution. 13.7 million because of chemical exposure. 91% of the world's population lives in places where the air quality levels exceed safe limits. Clean environment needs willpower. Clean environment needs commitment. Clean environment needs world leaders to walk the talk on campaign promises. To make safe environment a basic human right. It's only time. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.